Tommy Dreamer. Yes, this episode is about Tommy Dreamer. Now, for those who aren't familiar with what was going on, there's a series called Dark Side of the Ring, which is basically a documentary series dedicated to some of the more controversial moments in professional wrestling, both inside and outside of WWE. The most recent episode was called The Plane Trip from Hell, which basically depicted the events of a plane trip from, I think it was from like Europe to America or something like that. The most of the gentlemen got drunk and a lot of things occurred that we weren't familiar with. Some people probably might have heard about Brock Lesnar and Kurt Hennig, play fighting, and that's what got Kurt Hennig fired. Other people probably might have heard about Michael Hayes getting his haircut by X Pac. These things happen. The reason why Tommy Dreamer is in hot water for this is because he essentially kind of he ultimately sort of like excused what happened. Not necessarily excused it, but he ultimately basically made it seem like, this is just something that we did back in the day. It was just pranks. It was just jokes. It's nothing bad. Nothing bad happened to anybody. Nobody got hurt, so nothing went wrong. That was the kind of the tone that he was sort of like putting in. So a lot of people, took offense to that because it sounded like, victim blaming. It also sounded a little like it sounded really insensitive towards what the stewardess who was going through. The stewardess at the time, she was also featured on the episode, so you got a chance to see the plane trip from hell from both the wrestlers and the stewardess viewpoint. And Tommy Dreamer is under hot fire for that. So because of that, he's been sort of like taken off of certain things that he was connected with, and in the process, he apologized. Do I forgive him? No. Do I think he was sincere in his apology? Yes. Because the reason why I don't forgive him is because, I watch way too much Law and Order SVU, and we all know what these things kind of like lead towards. And if you hear something going on in the background, just know that I don't live here on my own. But I do think that he's sincere in his apology, and I don't think that like Tommy Dreamer actually meant to be as controversial as he was. I don't think that he was pushing towards being this offensive person. It's just that he clearly saw this for what it was. He clearly, I know what he was trying to go for, but the way that he's trying to go for it was exceptionally a terrible take. Because this wasn't harmless. This wasn't some kind of thing that you could just sort of brush off and is as somebody else being overreactive of what's going on. We all know what stuff like this could lead to. You know what I mean? If you saw anybody get drunk today and take off their clothes and put on a robe and just go over to a lady and be like, "Hey, why don't you touch this thing?" It's like, of course, you're going to want to intervene because you know that there's something wrong with that. You know that that's bad. You know that if the lady were to want to press charges or anything like that, you're not going to say, "Oh, she's just overreacting. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was just he was drunk and it was funny." You're not going to say that, especially not nowadays. We all know what this stuff like leads to and what it goes towards, and I'm repeating that because it's important. So I also think that Tommy Dreamer realizes that this is just not something that you should take lightly. And I feel like during that episode, he just thought it was something you could take lightly, And, because sometimes backlash is a thing. And I want to just talk about people's forms of justice, be it social, cultural, personal. Everybody has a different idea as to what they see as justice. You know what I mean? So some people probably might be like, "Nah, you gotta burn Tommy Dreamer at the stake for what he did." And let's face it, with his history, he'll probably survive it. But we really, I feel like what happens is that everybody has a different idea of like what should be a punishment for Tommy Dreamer. Like, let's be real, he did get suspended from work. He did get kicked off of Busted Open Radio. He did have some kind of repercussions. There are things that he was once involved in that he is now not involved in anymore. So he did get something. You know what I mean? And also, if we're just really making, and like, I'm not saying this to take up for the guy, but he wasn't even involved in what was going on the plane. He's just guilty of being ridiculously insensitive. So should we really like burn him at the stake or cancel him out or just say we don't like the guy anymore? That's up to you to decide. I'm not going to tell you how to react to what happened, because you're allowed to be upset about it. You probably might have had someone be sexually assaulted, or you yourself probably might have been sexually assaulted, and you probably might have encountered somebody who talked like Dreamer at the time, and it was it's like, this is the kind of thing that does need to stop. But like, at the end of the day, part of me just thinks that, like, yeah, Tommy Dreamer definitely got what he deserved, and I feel like he doesn't deserve anything more, because like, I can understand if he did something, and now with everything that's coming out in the open, you really can't. I mean, like, dude, RVD opened up the floodgates when he basically brought up how people used to just roofie each other for fun, for jokes. Like, watch your drinks around these guys. Bruh, if any woman that's speaking out about anything that happened to them in the 90s or the early 2000s, that's legit. It's like, you have to believe that now. It's too easy to not. It's too easy to like not ignore. But yeah, I do think that Tommy, like I said, I don't forgive Tommy Dreamer for what he said. I don't, but I do believe that he is sincere in his apology. I do feel like he this is him expressing remorse. And another thing that I notice about most people is that, like, I feel like people, when it comes to apologies, there is no remorse there. Like, people, like, 'cause I feel like people project the fact that they don't have remorse, so they don't believe that anyone else can have remorse either. It's kind of like the case of, I'm never going to accept apologies, because if I apologize, I wouldn't be sincere about it. You know what I mean? And that's just my take on that. I feel like, yeah, people just, there is no sincerity in this world anymore. There is no empathy in the world anymore. So a lot of people who are just straight up cruel and sociopathic are going to assume that everybody else is just as cruel and sociopathic as they are. And that's a scary thing. Do I think? But yeah, like, I don't forgive Tommy Dreamer, though. But he does, like, like, now he's facing the repercussions of his actions. And now he's seeing exactly how insensitive it sounded. So I like to think that, for me, him getting kicked off of this stuff and him getting suspended and all this other stuff, I do feel like these things are punishment enough. Like, I'm not gonna, like, well, do I want him to, live out on the street, living off of, like, off of noodles and working at a McDonald's because of what he did? Probably. That's a little extreme. Get it? But I wouldn't want that to happen, unless, of course, I was aware that he was doing some dirt too. I mean, if anything, the person who should be getting in trouble for this is Ric Flair. Because Ric Flair used to brag about stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Ric Flair has some, like, it's really weird. Like, you pay attention to a lot of stuff that Ric Flair used to say back in the day, and some of it just sounds a little suspect, Am I saying that Ric Flair belongs behind bars? I can't answer that question right now. But yeah, man, the old school professional. But you also have to take into account, like, the old school professional wrestling, when people got bored, they, A, got drunk, B, did cocaine, C, got into fights, and D, roofied people. So it's like, let's just play a game of who wasn't doing cocaine back in the day. Scary, bro. But yeah, like, but like I said, Tommy Dreamer, like, I don't forgive him, but I do understand, I like to think that he learned his lesson. So anything else that happens to him is going to be, either A, good, or B, excessive. Should he lose more endorsements and sponsorships and deals and all these other things? Probably. Should he get brutally murdered in front of his wife and children? No. Now I'm starting to wonder if Tommy Dreamer is a Republican. Because that would be Oddly, that would make sense. Jerry Lawler, you're next.